Milei on economic issues, the origin and definition of money. Milei starts by asking where money comes from, and he goes back to a barter economy, and what are the problems with the barter economy.
In that sense, what one would have to explain is where the existence of money comes from. So, what is the economy like when it does not have money? Well, it is a barter economy if you exchange goods for goods. Now, if you have a barter economy, you basically have two problems. One is the problem of double coincidence. That is, you have to find someone who wants the good that you have to sell. But at the same time, that person has to want the good that you have, which obviously raises a huge problem that causes a lot of transactions to be lost, with which there's a huge problem. And the other problem is the one of invisibility, because it may be that I want to eat bread, and the bakery in the corner wants an economic talk. But the problem is how many kilos of bread. I mean, obviously, those who tried to be president said, well, a few kilos I couldn't eat. So that raises a problem of invisibility, because perhaps what I would do for a kilo of bread at the conference is useless.
Milei here mentions that a barter economy has a problem of double coincidence and the inability to make change. Faced with these problems in a barter economy, people didn't ask the government to solve the problem. The government didn't solve this problem for them. In fact, what Milei points out is that people found what are called indirect goods to be used as money.
Now, the thing is that a human being, in the face of that situation, did not stop crying. And he didn't call either, I want to go to the state. He didn't call the state either. What did he do? He found the way around, he solved it, he looked for the way around, and he fixed it somehow. And one of the things that human beings discovered was that there were goods that were exchanged more than others. So they began to buy those goods that were exchanged much more. And they used them as an indirect exchange mechanism. Then, suddenly, they bought that good, and with that good, and they bought the one they wanted. That is how money appears. The good of indirect exchange is a good that is used to make transactions. That is money. So, in the face of this situation, different types of goods of indirect exchange appeared throughout history, and they were designated money. The first of all was cattle. And why was it cattle? Because as a nomad, man traveled with his own feed, that is, with cattle. So it was something that they exchanged regularly, and then they used it as a good of indirect exchange, and then the money was the cattle. Then man became a sedentary. And when he became a sedentary, one of the things that he ate with greater depth, so to speak, was bread. Then they noticed that many transactions were made in wheat. Then, later, we became the currency. So, we have different types of currencies. We have, for example, linen, coffee, tobacco. In fact, there is a very funny phrase by Milton Friedman, who talks about hyperinflation in Germany. And they say that the nails were used as money, and whiskey was also used. Sorry, not cognac. So, he said that it was the most liquid definition of money he had ever found in his life.
Milei relates a funny story here from Milton Friedman. During the hyperinflation in Germany between World War I and World War II, people used alcohol as money. Interestingly, this is exactly what survivalists will tell you. During a catastrophic event, alcohol will become a better money than most things.
In fact, if you look at the motives of many years of prisons, what was the money? Cigarettes. I mean, what did the prisoners ask for? They asked for cigarettes. Did they suddenly start smoking? No, they used them to exchange inside the jail. Now, what is the problem with this type of good? It does not serve as a store of value. I mean, what happened with this type of good is that it degraded over time. So, it's like having... Chris, note that I'm giving you another lesson. It's like having a negative interest rate. It's like ice cream. You have an ice cream. As time goes by, it's worth less. That's a negative interest rate.
Milei points out that cigarettes and many other commodity monies have the problem that they're not a good store of value. They waste away, and that is like having a negative interest rate. He makes the analogy of ice cream melting away. This is funny because it's exactly Michael Saylor's analogy about US dollars being like an ice cube melting away, which is why he wants you to buy Bitcoin. Of course, gold bugs will say gold is the only real money, but clearly this is not Milei's definition. Anything that acts as an indirect exchange good is considered money. Thus, there are many forms of money, and the gold bugs forget that gold also has major problems. One of the reasons we have fiat currencies is because gold was hard to transport. So instead of taking the risk and effort of transporting gold, we traded paper receipts for the gold, and we traded these receipts as if we were trading the gold. And this lack of transportability opened up the money for more centralization, which led the way to central banks, who now want to create central bank digital currencies so they can spy on us all the time, and so they can impose negative interest rates. In other words, going backwards and making money less useful. We need to go back to the roots of money. It was a private solution to a private problem. Central banks and governments should not get involved. Get the hell out. Milei does not presume to know what is the best currency, so he allows private citizens to make their own choice. He implemented a regime of currency competition. Long live freedom, damn it.